The Chicago sky dressed itself in gray that Saturday, just like every Saturday for the past 3 years. Sarah Martinez walked in silence through the damp pathways of Oakwood Cemetery on the south side. She wore a simple black dress, the same one she wore each time she came. In one hand, a bouquet of white lilies. In the other, a crumpled photograph of her 2 daughters, Emma, 7 years old, and Lily, 5. She always stopped in front of the same 2 small headstones, placed side by side as if they were still holding hands. She crouched down with difficulty and placed the fresh flowers on the cold marble. She caressed the polished surface with trembling fingers. She didn't cry anymore. Her tears had dried up months ago. What remained was something worse, a persistent hollow, an absence that coiled in her chest like a sleeping snake. "My girls," she whispered. "I'm still here." A cold wind swept through the cemetery, lifting dry leaves and dust. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, as if she could feel them close again. She didn't hear the footsteps. She didn't notice the presence until a small but firm voice interrupted the silence. "Are you their mum?" Sarah turned slowly. In front of her, standing on the wet gravel, was a girl about 10 years old. She wore a blue backpack hanging from one shoulder, a worn-out sweater, and her hair pulled back in a messy braid. She looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and something else, pity, perhaps. "What did you say?" asked Sarah, still confused. The girl extended her hand. She held a bouquet of withered flowers tied with a red ribbon. On top, a blurry Polaroid. Sarah took it carefully. In the image, 2 girls walked hand in hand in front of a building. It wasn't clear, but it was them. It was them. Emma. Lily. This can't be. I saw them. They live in my building, with a man who says he's their dad, but sometimes they cry for their mum. The girl lowered her voice. They didn't know she was dead. Sarah felt her heart stop for a second. She looked at the girl, trembling. "What's your name?" "Katie." "Where do they live?" Katie pulled a folded paper from her jeans pocket. It was stained and wrinkled, but the address was legible. A street in the same neighborhood, just a 15-minute walk away. Sarah took it with trembling hands. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because they look a lot like the photo on the graves, and because I don't think they're dead." Sarah was speechless. Her entire body wanted to run, scream, shake the world, until someone told her she wasn't crazy. But her legs moved on their own. When she looked up, Katie was no longer there. She disappeared among the graves like a silent ghost. Clutching the photo against her chest, Sarah left the cemetery. The air grew denser with each step. A light rain began to fall, soaking her hair and dress. She walked without thinking, without direction, following only the number the paper showed her. 10 minutes later, she found herself in front of a 3-story building, with peeling paint and rusty balconies. It didn't look like a dangerous place, but rather one where people didn't ask questions. Sarah hid behind a streetlight pole, watching from the corner. She didn't know what she expected to find, but something inside her, that instinct only a mother knows, told her not to move. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The street silence was only interrupted by the distant sound of traffic. Then the building's door opened. Sarah held her breath. First came a man, tall, thin, with a grown-out beard and a black cap. Sarah recognized him immediately. Even though time had changed his appearance, even though he now went by another name, it was Julian, her ex-husband. The same man who, through tears, told her 3 years ago that the girls didn't survive the accident. The same man who cried with her during the funeral. Behind him came 2 girls, one with braids and a pink backpack, the other with an oversized blue jacket. They had the same eyes as her, the same curls. The older one was looking at her phone. The younger one was humming a song. Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The ground was no longer solid. The air wasn't air, everything compressed in her chest until she could barely breathe. No, it can't be. She watched them get into a car parked in front. Julian helped them in, smiled, fastened their seatbelts. He acted like the perfect father. But Sarah knew the truth. That smile was a mask. Those girls were her daughters, the same ones she believed were dead. the same ones she cried for during 1,000 empty nights. The car started and disappeared into traffic. Sarah stood still, paralyzed, the photo clutched in her hand, the wet paper against her chest. Her whole body trembled. Part of her wanted to run after the car, scream their names, hug them until the air ran out. But another part, the stronger one, the one still thinking clearly, knew that if she rushed in, she would lose them again. Her eyes burned. Not from sadness, not this time. It was rage. Rage for the stolen years, for the lies, for the unnecessary pain. And in the middle of that whirlwind of emotions, a single phrase repeated in her mind, over and over, like an echo impossible to silence. They're alive. From the sidewalk across from the building, Sarah became a shadow. She returned every afternoon for a week. Hidden behind an abandoned newsstand, she noted every detail in a black notebook. The time they left, what clothes they wore, who accompanied them, how they behaved. Sometimes she took photos with her cell phone, zoomed in to the max, trembling with nerves. There were nights when she stayed there until the lights came on in the second-floor apartment and the curtains closed. They lived like a normal family. That was the most painful part. Emma, her oldest daughter, left at 7 wearing a school uniform. Grey skirt, white shirt, a purple backpack hanging from her shoulder. She walked holding Julian's hand, as if he were her hero, her safe figure. Sometimes Lily went with them. Other times, she stayed with a woman Sarah didn't know, probably a babysitter. She was about 30, with dyed hair and an always serious face. Lily, her Lily. She had stopped wearing the colourful hair bows she used to love. Now she wore her hair down, straight, without decorations. She walked with quick steps, without jumping like she used to when she was little. Sarah remembered her dancing in unicorn pajamas, her loud laughter filling the house. And now, it was like seeing her through a foggy mirror. She looked like her, but she wasn't. She was a version molded by other arms, by another voice. Sarah clenched her teeth every time Julian smiled. He walked with the confidence of someone who doesn't fear being discovered. He called himself Oscar now. She heard it when a neighbor from the building greeted him. "Good morning, Mr. Oscar. How are the girls doing?" He responded with a wide smile. "Great, thanks. It's almost their birthday." Sarah bit her lip until she tasted the metallic flavor of blood. He would celebrate their birthday with them, as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't buried them with a lie. On Thursday afternoon, Sarah couldn't take it anymore. She waited for Julian to leave the building alone. She walked fast, followed him a block and a half. When she made sure no one was watching them, she caught up with him and spoke with a broken but firm voice. "I saw you, Julian." He stopped dead, his body tensed. It took him a couple of seconds to turn around. He recognized her immediately. "Sarah." "Don't say my name," she spat. "What did you do? How could you?" He took a deep breath. He didn't look nervous, not even surprised. "Don't do this here. Why did you lie to me? Why did you make me bury my daughters? Lower your voice. What kind of monster are you?" Julian grabbed her arm, forcefully, but without open violence. He dragged her toward a nearby alley, where cars didn't pass and the city noise faded. "You think this is going to help you?" he said in a low but sharp voice. "You think you'll get them back by screaming at me in the street? They don't know you, Sarah. They don't remember you. You're dead in their world, dead." Sarah felt a knot in her stomach. "I'm their mother. You were their mother. 3 years ago you signed papers that declared you incapable. You abandoned everything. That was your manipulation. I was sedated, in shock. I lost my daughters and you signed as if I was worth nothing." Julian looked down for a moment. His voice turned colder. "If you come near again, I disappear. I'll leave with them and you'll never see them again. You have no proof, no custody, nothing. Do you really want to risk it?" She didn't respond. She just looked at him with burning eyes, full of fury. He released her arm and walked away as if nothing had happened. As if he had just talked to an annoying neighbor about noise. Sarah stayed there, with her soul in pieces, with trembling knees, struggling not to faint. That night, she knocked on Rebecca's door, her neighbor. It was late, maybe past 11. Her face was pale and her hands clutched the edge of her coat as if holding herself together. "I need help," she said as soon as Rebecca opened the door. "Legal. Urgent." Rebecca, a middle-aged lawyer with a firm character and steady voice, let her in without asking questions. She put a hot cup of tea on the table and waited for Sarah to speak. When the story came out, word by word, image by image, Rebecca's expression went from astonishment to horror and finally to determination. "We're going to find a way," she said, "but you can't act alone. He could report you. He has custody, at least on paper." "What can I do?" "Collect evidence, everything you have. Photographs, recordings, witnesses, anything that proves those girls are your daughters and that he falsified everything." Sarah nodded with glassy eyes. "I'm going to need help, Rebecca. I can't do this alone. I know someone, a data analyst, discreet. He can help us with the digital part." Sarah could barely speak. She got up, thanked her silently, and returned to her apartment. That night, she sat on the floor of the empty room that once belonged to her daughters. She opened an old box that still had school labels, children's drawings, and a pink blanket, folded carefully. She hugged it as if it were a piece of living flesh. And for the first time in a long time, she cried. Not just from pain, not just from helplessness. She cried for the memories stolen from her daughters, because every bedtime story, every lullaby, every breakfast with laughter, everything had been ripped away, distorted, rewritten by the man she once loved. Now, only one certainty burned inside her. She wasn't going to let that monster finish erasing her. Andrew's office didn't look like a place where secrets were uncovered. It was a modest office in Lincoln Park, with walls full of technical books, 2 computers, and an old coffee maker that constantly bubbled. When Rebecca and Sarah entered, he greeted them with a calm smile, as if dismantling lies was part of the daily menu. "So, your ex-husband faked your daughter's deaths, changed his identity, and now lives with them as if nothing happened," Andrew summarized, while opening a folder on his computer. "That's not just illegal, it's meticulously sick." Sarah only nodded. "It is," she whispered, "and I need you to help me prove it." Rebecca had already told him part of the story, but Andrew needed proof. Something more than pain and a blurry photograph. "The first thing I want to see is that address," he said, typing fast. "Let's confirm names, records, bank movements, everything we can without raising suspicions." In the days that followed, Sarah began to act with a precision she never imagined having. Katie, the girl from the cemetery, turned out to be an unexpected ally. She had seen Emma and Lily again in the building. She had spoken to them once from a distance, pretending to be a curious neighbor. "They told me their names are Sophie and Paula," Katie said one afternoon while drinking a Coke at Sarah's house. "But I know they're lying. The little one told me she was afraid the Dream Lady would get mad if she talked too much." "The Dream Lady?" asked Sarah. "That's what they call a psychologist who sees them. But I think she tells them weird things, like she's brainwashing them." Sarah felt a chill. With Katie's help, they managed to place an old cell phone, with the camera activated, in a planter in the hallway outside Julian's apartment. The images were blurry, but enough to see movements, hear fragments of conversations. Once, Julian was heard clearly saying, "Nobody can know who you are. If anyone asks, you're Sophie, and she's Paula." "Understand." Andrew received the audios, cleaned them up, converted them into admissible digital evidence. "This is already strong," he commented while analyzing a file, "but I need something more concrete. Do you have anything that can give me a genetic footprint? Hair, saliva, whatever?" Sarah thought out loud. "Lily sometimes leaves hair ties lying around, and Emma uses hairbrushes." The next time Katie entered the building, invited by a little neighbor girl to play, she located a black hair tie with blonde hairs in the common area. She picked it up with latex gloves that Rebecca had given her. "I have the hair tie," she said, with a triumphant smile when she gave it to Sarah. "What's next?" Andrew took the sample to a private lab that owed him a favor. Sarah delivered a sample of her own DNA, taken with a cheek swab. The results arrived 3 days later. Genetic compatibility, 99.99997%. "It's your daughter," Andrew confirmed. "No doubt. Lily is your biological daughter. This, combined with the audios and images, we already have a serious case. But Andrew didn't stop there. He wanted to go deeper. I'm tracing the name he uses now, Oscar Williams. I found his social security number, his tax history, everything clean. But there's something weird. It was generated only 2 years ago. Too recent for someone who claims to have had children for more than a decade. He falsified his identity, asked Rebecca. Not exactly. He used a real birth certificate from an Oscar Williams who died at age 3. He stole that identity and reactivated it with altered data. Sarah felt a mixture of nausea and fury. Julian had planned everything. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't desperation. It was method, Andrew continued. He works as a maintenance technician at a private clinic in River North, but his medical file has gaps, missing data, holes that indicate someone erased or replaced information, possibly to avoid being recognized by his real data. Rebecca began compiling everything into a legal file: photos, audios, DNA document, falsified data, identity changes. The folder grew like a bomb that was soon going to explode. Sarah barely slept, not from anxiety, but from vigilance. She had placed a new lock on the door, checked the building cameras every night. She knew Julian wasn't going to stay quiet if he suspected something, and she was right. One dawn, while the sky was still dark blue and the city barely murmured, she heard a metallic sound. It was faint, repetitive, like a click, click, click. Sarah got up from bed and approached the door of her apartment stealthily. The doorknob was turning. Someone on the other side was trying to get in. Without forcing, without breaking, just testing. She froze, her heart beat in her ears. She grabbed her cell phone and dialed Rebecca. "They're here," she whispered. "They're trying to get in." Rebecca told her not to make noise, to lock herself in the bedroom. Sarah obeyed. She heard footsteps walking away. There were no blows, no shouts, just a silent threat. At dawn, they checked the cameras. The face wasn't visible. Just a figure with a hood, gloves, walking as if they knew every corner of the building. Sarah had no doubts. It was Julian. He had wanted to send her a clear message. "I'm watching you." But this time, it wouldn't work. Sarah sat in her kitchen with the evidence folder open on the table. Her fingers reviewed each sheet, each image, and in her eyes there was no fear. There was fire, because she was no longer alone, and because she wasn't going to stop until she got her daughters back. The Cook County Family Court smelled of disinfectant, aged paper, and reheated coffee. Sarah was sitting in the waiting room of courtroom number 7, with her hands clasped and knuckles white from squeezing them so hard. Next to her, Rebecca held a thick folder labeled in red ink, "Martinez versus Williams, Criminal Complaint." Hours earlier, Rebecca had formally filed the complaint for aggravated kidnapping, document falsification and identity fraud, backed by a wealth of irrefutable evidence, falsified certificates, recordings, photographs, DNA tests, and Julian's altered history. Everything had been accepted. The judge on duty, upon reading the folder, didn't hesitate. Immediate arrest warrant. Sarah didn't know whether to feel relief or panic. The monster was about to fall, but her daughters still didn't know the truth. For them, she was still a ghost, a manipulated memory, a threat. The operation was carried out that same afternoon. A group of plainclothes police officers, accompanied by an agent from the state's attorney's office, went to Julian's address. Andrew monitored the location from his computer while Rebecca talked on the phone with the commander in charge. Sarah, although she wanted to be present, was forced to stay a few blocks away, watching from a parked car with tinted windows. "They're coming down," Rebecca said, looking at her phone. "There they go." Sarah held her breath. Through the windshield, she saw the scene unfold like a silent movie. The building door opened. Julian came out with Lily holding his hand, while Emma walked behind them, distracted, holding a grey stuffed animal. Sarah felt her heart squeeze. There they were, so close, so far. Suddenly the agents surrounded Julian. One of them showed the arrest warrant. Julian tried to back away, but there was no space. Emma screamed. Lily clung to his arm. Julian looked at them with a mixture of rage and helplessness as he was handcuffed in front of them. "No!" Emma screamed. Don't take him away. He's my dad. My dad. Calm down. An officer tried to soothe, but the girl lunged at Julian, hugging him desperately. Don't touch him. My mom is dead. You don't understand anything. Sarah broke into tears. She wanted to get out of the car. She wanted to run to them, explain everything, scream the truth to the four winds, but Rebecca held her firmly. It's not the time. Not yet. Neighbors began coming out of their homes, recording with their cell phones, murmuring theories. The spectacle was inevitable. A man in handcuffs, two crying girls, the truth finally breaking the surface. Sarah couldn't resist anymore. She got out of the car. She walked slowly, trembling, until she was a few yards from them. Emma? Lily? The girls looked up. Emma looked at her as if seeing a spectre. No! She screamed. Don't come near! You're dead! My dad said you were dead! Sarah took another step. Her voice trembled. I'm your mum, sweetheart. I'm alive. I've always been alive. But the girls backed away. Lily burst into tears and hugged Emma. A social worker arrived and gently separated them, guiding them toward a white van with no logos. Sarah knelt in the middle of the street, with no strength in her legs. The van started and disappeared into traffic. The windows were tinted. She couldn't see them. Katie, who had arrived with Andrew minutes later, approached silently. She put her hand on Sarah's shoulder. She said nothing. There was no need. The sun began to set. And although Julian had finally fallen, the emptiness in Sarah's chest only grew deeper. That night in Rebecca's apartment, the silence was thick. Nobody spoke. Andrew read the new documents arriving from the state's attorney's office. Katie played with a bracelet made of plastic beads. Sarah stared at the floor without blinking. They're going to take them to a temporary foster home, Rebecca explained. They can't give them to you immediately. Legally, they're protected until the psychological damage is evaluated. It could take weeks, months even. Sarah nodded without looking up. I hate them, she said suddenly in a low voice. Who? Asked Katie. The lies. The ones they stole from me. Everything he told them to erase what we were. Rebecca approached and took her hand. This isn't over. But the hardest step has been taken. We caught him. Now we're going to rebuild. Sarah smiled sadly. What if they never forgive me? Maybe they won't, Andrew said bluntly. But that doesn't change the fact that you have the right to be with them, to heal together. Sarah stood up. She walked toward a cardboard box where she had saved all the drawings, photos, letters her daughters once wrote her. She took out a wrinkled sheet with a children's drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands. One said, Mom, another, Emma, and the last, Lily. She stuck it on the wall, right above the table. I'm going to fight for them, even if they don't remember me, even if they hate me at first. I won't give up. In another corner of the city, Julian spent his first night in preventive detention. He made no calls. He didn't ask for a lawyer. He just remained silent, as if he knew the end had come and that this time there was no escape. The first time she saw them again was in a white room, with walls decorated with colorful drawings and motivational phrases that barely disguised the weight of silence. The Child Psychology Center, where the supervised visits would take place, had high windows, toys organized by category, and a constant smell of crayons and disinfectant. Sarah sat in a low chair, like those in kindergarten, with sweaty palms and her heart pounding her chest like a drum. The doors opened. Lily entered first, holding the hand of a psychologist. Then Emma, with her arms crossed and furrowed brow. Both had longer hair. Lily wore a unicorn t-shirt and Emma worn jeans. But it wasn't the clothes that hurt. It was the look. That unfamiliar, contained look, as if Sarah were a stranger suddenly invading a safe space. Hello, my girls, she said with a trembling voice. I've waited for you so long. Emma interrupted her without hesitation. My dad said you were dead, Sarah swallowed. I understand. He told you many things that aren't true. He never hit us, Emma insisted. He took us to school. He read us stories. And I did too, Sarah responded calmly. Before all this, before he separated me from you. Lily watched in silence. She held a stuffed animal pressed against her chest. The psychologist asked them to sit down and draw what they felt. Sarah tried to approach, but Emma dragged Lily to another table. "I don't want to be near her." Sarah felt a knife pierce her soul. During the following weeks, the sessions continued. Sometimes there were small advances, like when Lily looked at her without fear, or when she accepted a cookie from her hand. But there were also setbacks. One day, Emma tore up a drawing in her face and shouted, "You're not my mom. You never were." Sarah remained motionless, not from rage, not from pain, but because she understood it wasn't personal. They were wounds. They were years of lies filtered like slow poison. 3 months passed. One day, while Lily was painting with crayons, she drew a woman with curly hair and a purple dress, sitting in a chair, reading a book. In the background were 2 girls, one with little bows, the other with a stuffed animal. Sarah recognized it immediately. "Who is she?" she asked, crouching to her level. Lily looked at her, hesitated, and whispered, "The story lady." The psychologist wrote something in her notebook without looking up. Sarah, on the other hand, felt her heart open a crack, small but real. A crack where light was entering again. A couple of weeks later, while picking up toys, Lily tripped over a box of blocks. Sarah lifted her immediately. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Lily looked into her eyes, and for the first time, without being corrected or influenced, she said, "Yes, Mommy." Sarah didn't know whether to scream, cry, or freeze. She just hugged her carefully, as if she were a fragile bubble. Emma, from the other side of the room, looked down. She said nothing, but she didn't scream again. In family court, the judge read the final resolution. Based on the evidence presented, psychological testimonies, and in favor of the minor's well-being, custody of Emma and Lily is granted to Sarah Martinez. Sarah didn't move. Rebecca squeezed her hand. Andrew, from behind, let out a sigh of relief. Katie was there too. She smiled shyly. Sarah hugged her gratefully. Leaving the courthouse with the papers in hand, Sarah felt her feet touch the ground for the first time in 3 years. The new house wasn't big, but it was full of details designed for them. A room painted pale pink with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, another with shelves full of books, puzzles, and drawings. In the kitchen, a refrigerator covered with colorful magnets. In the dining room, a cardboard box waiting for them, the box from the past. Sarah called them with a soft voice. "I want to show you something." She opened the box. Inside, there were photos of them as babies, school drawings, letters with spelling mistakes, a handprint in blue paint that Lily had made in kindergarten. Emma took a photograph. It was herself, at 4 years old, with a red bow and hands full of flour. "Is this me?" Sarah nodded. "That day we made cookies. We burned half of them, but you said they tasted like sweet stars." Emma frowned. "I don't remember, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Your memory was manipulated, sweetheart, but here I am. Here's everything." Lily hugged an old stuffed animal she found at the bottom. Sarah had kept it carefully. It still had the little yogurt stain on the ear. "My teddy bear!" she shouted joyfully. "I thought it was lost." Sarah stroked her hair. "It was never lost. It was just waiting, like me." Emma said nothing, but that night, before sleeping, she asked for a story to be read to her, not to Lily, to her. Sarah read in a low voice, trembling with emotion. Once upon a time, in a very distant forest, there was a mom who lost her daughters, but she didn't give up. She searched for them with all her heart, until she found them again. The following months were hard. Emma still had attacks of silence, moments of rage, confused dreams where she screamed in the middle of the night. Lily, on the other hand, had good days and others where she asked if her other dad was sad in jail. Sarah never spoke badly of Julian in front of them. She responded with the truth, without hatred. "He made wrong decisions, but you're not to blame." The wounds didn't disappear, but they began to close. With therapy, a new school, and above all, patience. A year later, sitting on the house porch while it rained, Lily looked at Sarah and asked, "Do you think we'll always be together?" Sarah looked into her eyes. She didn't promise the impossible. She didn't swear that nothing would separate them again. She only responded, "I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure we are." Emma, who was reading a book next to them, smiled slightly. She said nothing, but she slid her hand over Sarah's arm, a small gesture, powerful. There, under the rain, with drops tapping on the tin roof, a new story began. Not without scars, but woven, thread by thread, with love, the real kind.